I got the BYD Dolphin Surf from BYD on loan for 2 weeks and was able to put the vehicle through its paces for you. I've already made 3 videos about this car. For one, there's the comprehensive car review, as always, where I covered everything from the looks, build quality and space to the assistance systems. We took it on the highway and in the city, determined its range and consumption, and of course tested the charging speed at a fast charging station. I also made a separate video about all the settings in this vehicle, including the navigation, the infotainment system and so on. And I also took it out at night to see how well the roads are illuminated, how safe it is to drive in the dark, how the interior is lit, and how well the reversing camera and other features work after dark. You can find all those videos in the playlist, which I'll link for you down in the video description. Feel free to check them out if you like. And now here's a summary of all the pros and cons after 2 weeks, including from daily drives, everyday use, shopping trips, and so on. I'll summarize all of that now. We'll get started right after the intro. Welcome to Smart 2 Drive, I'm Alex. It's great to have you with me again here today with the BYD Dolphin Surf. And I have to say, the car really surprised me in many positive ways, but not everything was positive. Let's start with the looks and the build quality. When you look at the car, it's obviously very compact, 3.99 meters long. It's also kept really narrow, 1.72 meters with the side mirrors. We have 4 seats, so there aren't 3 seats in the back, but 2, and they are truly full-size seats. And I can really say that the build quality, both outside and inside, is excellent. Inside, we just have to look around. The seats, we have these sport bucket seats, vegan leather. We're also talking about a car that's available for a very, very low price, starting at 23,000 euros. But you never get the feeling that you're sitting in a cheap and low quality car. Instead, everything is really well made. The doors on the inside are also really good for this price point. We have neoprene, or a type of neoprene, that covers the doors, and the materials have soft foam backing. Sure, there's hard plastic up on the dashboard and also on the top of the doors, and I did criticize that for being relatively prone to scratching. I know this exact material from the MG4, for example, and you quickly get fingernail marks and so on embedded in there, which isn't so great. But everything else, aside from this top layer of hard plastic, is really well made in this car and makes a good impression. And from the outside too, the panel gaps are consistent, the doors close with a solid thud, they shut nicely, everything lines up well, so the build quality is really excellent. You wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I wouldn't have imagined it when I saw, that this car was available from just under 23,000 or even from 20,000 euros at launch, that it could be this well made. But BYD really put a lot of effort in here, and for me that's actually something that sets the Chinese manufacturers apart, that the interior, even in the back, is just excellently finished. The 16-inch rims are also really nice, and you get them starting with the boost trim, so from the mid-range trim level up. The Active only has 15-inch steel rims, which of course doesn't look quite as nice, but the car looks really sporty. It is of course very tall, and because it's narrow and high, depending on which side, from which angle you look at the car, it sometimes looks a bit, a bit like a soapbox, maybe like a soapbox racer. But then again, if you look at it from lower down and in the side silhouette and from the back with the nice rear spoiler, then it looks very nice and very high quality and very sporty, I have to say. The lime green color is just a total eye-catcher. I'm really the center of attention here, and people sometimes smile at me. My neighbors, who usually know me with bigger cars, have to chuckle a bit because it's of course very youthful in this color, I think. But you can also get the car in other, less conspicuous colors, and then it's really not as kitschy as it looks here. But let's stay on the exterior for a moment and move on to the lights, the lighting. The daytime running light is very distinctive. We have these 6 stripes at the front, which looks really, really cool. Here in the comfort trim, so in the highest trim line, we have LED lights. With the Active and Boost, you unfortunately only get halogen lights. I didn't test those, but the LED lights were also very, very good at night in the night test. The roads were very bright and very well illuminated. And the high beam assistant, which is basically included here, did a great job. The high beams came on immediately, and when there was oncoming traffic, they also turned off immediately, so we didn't blind anyone. I liked that very, very much. And also the taillights are very nice. We have a continuous LED light strip, which makes a really cool impression. I think looks very, very modern and also gives the car a certain sporty feeling. And it's also immediately recognizable when you see the car from behind. Then it's also really very individual, I must say. But to wrap up the topic of lighting, I also have to mention a negative point. We don't even have a trunk light and no light in the back of the car either. So in the back of the car, I wouldn't mind so much with such a short car, because if you have the light on up front, you can still see a little something in the back. But the trunk, I would have at least wished for one LED there. I've never actually had that with another car, that the trunk is completely dark, that there's no light at all. If you have to get to your cargo in the dark, you can't really see much. That's a bit of a shame. But otherwise, I liked it. There's no ambient lighting, but all the buttons, the steering wheel buttons and the side buttons and all are nicely illuminated in turquoise. And that actually looks very high quality, I have to say. All in all, it still makes a good impression for the price. The suspension on this car is also surprisingly mature, I have to say. I had imagined it completely differently beforehand. I rather thought it would be a bit like the VW e-Up, that you just notice that you're sitting in a microcar, so to speak, but no, not at all. The suspension is super good. It's very comfortable, it absorbs bumps well, you barely notice manhole covers, so very subtle, really good, but it's not spongy at all. For example, with the BYD Seal U, I had the feeling that it was too spongy for me, even too comfortable. With the BYD Atto 2, for example, I was also very impressed with the suspension, and this one is very similar. It just drives very well, and not like a microcar, but really very, very mature. And you really feel that, for one, because the space is surprisingly good, and of course the height of the car is also very good. We have a height of 1.59 meters, so it's almost as high as an SUV. For this reason, in combination with the good suspension, you just never have the feeling that you're sitting in such a microcar. So really good. The front-wheel drive here in the comfort trim with its high performance of 156 horsepower is really, substantial, so you get off the line well. BYD states 9.1 seconds. I also have to say that the vehicle doesn't have that immediate punch from a standstill, so it doesn't push you right into the seat in that typical EV way. But then it pulls very, very well, and even when you're, let's say, driving 30-40 kilometers per hour and the light turns yellow and you want to quickly get through, when you accelerate then, it really pushes you right into your seat. And on the highway, you get to 150 kilometers per hour so quickly, which is the top speed you can reach here. I managed 157 or 158 on the speedometer, and the car reaches that immediately within a few seconds. So the acceleration is really good, especially here with the large engine. And I like that very, very much. So the suspension is really top-notch. When you accelerate in a corner, the front-wheel drive sometimes loses a bit of traction and the car tends to understeer. The same is true when you brake hard, especially on warm roads. Then, the car started to slide quite quickly. That might also be due to the lower vehicle weight. But if you take a sharp corner without accelerating, the car doesn't roll at all and has super safe cornering behavior. So all in all, a very, very mature suspension, I have to say, for this vehicle class and vehicle size with this vehicle weight. On the topic of the highway and higher speeds, when you're driving around 100 to 120, the car is very smooth and you hardly have the feeling that it's poorly insulated. Above 120, the wind noise becomes noticeably louder. It might also be because the windshield is relatively steep. And above 140, it's already quite loud, I have to say. Then it's not so pleasant anymore. You can't hear quiet music so well or have a quiet conversation. But below 140, 130, it gets nice and quiet again. And from 120 down, it's very, very pleasant to drive in the car. So it's also a very, very good highway vehicle, which personally surprised me a lot. Let's get straight to the consumption and range. Here too, it really surprised me on the highway. We had a consumption of around 17 kilowatt hours, which wasn't surprisingly low, but it wasn't a lot either. It's a good average. Of course, with a car of this size, I might wish for a little less, but not on the highway, where almost no car manages with fewer kilowatt hours. But of course, there are also efficient, heavy, more powerful vehicles like a Tesla Model 3 or even a Model Y that can achieve similar consumption. Still, we get a highway range, if you were to drive the car, from 100% until it's completely empty of 250 to 260 kilometers, which is actually surprisingly good. And in the city, we had a consumption of 13 to 14 kilowatt hours. Right now, I'm seeing 14.2, which is a combined figure with country roads and so on. And so with the 43 kilowatt hour battery, which is already the large battery in the comfort trim, we get a city range of, a little over 320 kilometers, approximately. And that is significantly less than the stated WLTP range, I have to honestly say. In some cases, not for the comfort, but for the boost trim, so with the smaller engine, BYD states a city WLTP range of over 500 kilometers. I don't know if the boost can manage that with the smaller engine, but this comfort version definitely wouldn't have. I think more than 350, even if I drive very leisurely in the city, would be nearly impossible to achieve. So I might have wished for a bit more city range here, but it's definitely still perfectly okay for the driving profile you typically have with such a small electric car. Unfortunately, the car doesn't have one pedal driving. We have two recuperation levels, standard and strong. I always drive on the strong recuperation level because even that isn't strong for me. The car only decelerates very slowly, just braking very gently when you take your foot off the accelerator. When you brake, the battery also gets charged. You can see that on the infotainment display, which then puts a minus sign in front of this kW reading, showing that the battery is currently recuperating energy. But the car doesn't come to a complete stop. It keeps rolling at around 10 to 15 kilometers per hour when you take your foot completely off the accelerator. However, once you've come to a stop and fully press the brake pedal, auto hold becomes active if you've enabled it here, and then it won't start rolling on its own again, which in turn is quite okay. I was only able to test the sound system for the comfort trim, and that's already called the premium sound system by BYD. And I have to say the volume is okay, but it's very treble heavy and has almost no low tones. So you don't have a subwoofer in this car, at least I wouldn't know where, and I don't hear one. And the speakers here in the doors and so on, they are, let's say, mostly made up of tweeters and mid-range drivers. So I'm really missing the bass here. That's a bit of a shame. The BYD Atto 3, for example, which is only a little more expensive, was significantly better in terms of the sound system. It wasn't outstanding either, but it was much better than this vehicle here. I've already mentioned the seats. I think they're really excellent. You wouldn't think at all that you're sitting in an inexpensive e-car of this size, because I'd sometimes wish for seats like these in some much more expensive vehicles. Seats that look like this, have this shape, and at the same time are so wonderfully soft. So you can press into everything nicely. But it's not too soft, it's not spongy either, it's really perfect. The side support is good, but not too tight. The back has good side support. So all in all, I find the seats to be excellent, and even on longer daily drives, I never had the feeling that my rear end was falling asleep or anything like that. I like that a lot. I have to say it's top notch. They're also electrically adjustable even for the front passenger, which is also rare for vehicles in this price range, that the passenger seat is also electrically adjustable. However, this is of course only available in the comfort trim. In the Active, for example, you still have the manually adjustable seats, but that's perfectly okay. Let's summarize the amount of space. Basically, it feels surprisingly wide up front, so you have a lot of room, especially to the right towards the center console for your right leg. That's also because the center console is nice and narrow, so there's plenty of space. On the left side, it's a bit tighter, of course, but that's eventually due to the vehicle's width. But I also like that up here there's more or less a wider ledge. Some cars, especially compact cars, have a very narrow edge here. Here it's a bit wider. It could be a little more horizontal for my taste, so you can rest your arm a bit more comfortably on top, but that's okay, that's really not a major criticism. It is, however, this hard plastic, a slightly softer cover here, like the one further down, this grey cover on the door. That would be cool, of course. But okay. Otherwise, the space in the back is surprisingly good, especially the headroom, which is due to this high roof, but also the legroom. So I've adjusted the driver's seat for myself, and when I sit behind it, I still have a fist's worth of space. So it's crazy that it works so well, and I can really imagine traveling very comfortably in the back. We also have 2 full-size seats in the back. With 2 people, you have a ton of space, and we have Isofix on the left and right, and I was also able to install 2 child seats in the back. It was still easily possible to buckle up and so on, but of course no one can fit in between when you have 2 child seats in there. The trunk with 316 liters of volume is surprisingly large for the car. That's mainly because it goes down even deeper. We can open the cargo floor, and underneath we have these organizer bags from BYD for charging cables and such. You can really store a whole lot in there. It's surprisingly large, really, for the car. I was also able to do some shopping trips with this vehicle. No problem at all. Storing a few crates of drinks or a few shopping bags in the back. And when we fold down the seats, the car is really spacious. And because of the height, I think you could almost fit a washing machine in the back. I haven't tested it, but it might work. So that's really surprisingly good. We then have 1,130 liters of trunk volume with the rear seat bench folded down. The rear seat bench is also foldable, which is very important. And that allows you to transport a lot, even with this mini vehicle. Unfortunately, we don't have a Frunk, although I can imagine that maybe Frunk.at could retrofit one soon. Maybe depending on how well the Dolphin sells in the future, there could be aftermarket Frunks available here, because there is actually a bit of space in the front for such aftermarket Frunks, but there is definitely no standard one. The infotainment system, typical for BYD, I like a lot. We have a very powerful processor, the display responds very well to your fingers. The navigation system is from Google Maps, and the charging planning is just as it should be. Feel free to watch the video in the playlist where I show the navigation settings and so on. You can filter charging stations by all sorts of criteria: speed, provider. You can have it automatically suggest charging stops when you navigate to a destination further away. You have the voice assistant here, which you can use to control all sorts of things, heated seats and so on. So pretty much everything you could wish for. We also have various apps in the BYD store. We have the karaoke app here, which I've shown more often in the other BYD tests. You can download YouTube, an internet browser, and so on. A disadvantage is that you have to create a hotspot with your phone, because even though the car is online, it won't let you watch YouTube videos or surf the internet without an external internet connection. So you have to create a hotspot with your smartphone, for example, and connect the car to it. I also showed that in the video, in the settings video, and then you can also watch YouTube and so on. That also works excellently, very smoothly and so on. And you could also theoretically connect the Linkifon AI box, for example, to the car via Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And then you can also watch Netflix, Amazon Prime and so on. It's also linked in the video description. Feel free to check it out with a discount code and so on, as always. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto is possible wirelessly. I also showed once how to connect it. It also worked excellently. There were no issues, disconnections or anything else. And because of that, I could also listen to YouTube music and so on via my smartphone. The 360-degree camera is typical for BYD, excellent. You can turn the car in all directions. You can see the rims and different viewing angles around the car. You have the top-down view, the 360-degree top-down view. Very, very good. And also in the night test in the dark, the camera was still convincing and delivered a very, very good sharp image. However, the 360-degree camera is only available, I believe, from the comfort trim level. In any case, in the Active, the cheapest one, it's not included. But there you at least have a classic reversing camera, which is already very, very good for the price range in the entry-level segment. Then we come to the assistance systems, to the ADAS systems. For example, here the lane keeping assistant, the lane correction assistant, and the adaptive cruise control. All of that worked very, very well. Just as well as in the more expensive BYDs like the Seal U, the Seal Lion 7, for example, or the Seal U or the Seal. It works just as well. It recognizes the lane very, very reliably, even on dark country roads, except for one spot where the country road was very narrow and curvy. There it briefly didn't recognize it, but otherwise always very, very good. Yes, on the highway, sharp curves, no problem at all. And the vehicle also reduces the speed when you approach tighter curves on a country road. Then it also brakes automatically accordingly so that you feel very safe and don't have the feeling that the car might fly out of the curve. However, it doesn't automatically brake for hazards or roundabouts or intersections. And also when an 80 sign or something comes up, you get a notification that the sign was recognized and you can adjust the speed. But it doesn't adjust before the sign, so you still have to brake yourself so you don't get a speeding ticket. BYD could perhaps improve that with an over-the-air update. There are over-the-air updates here, which means the car is updated again and again without you having to go to the workshop. And there will be further improvements in the future. And then maybe that will get better too. But on the whole, this system worked surprisingly well. And just like with other BYDs, I have to criticize that the ICC only works up to 130 kilometers per hour. After that, it no longer keeps the lane automatically. You get a small subtle message that the system is about to turn off. But I don't know, I find it too inconspicuous. It can just happen that you rely on the car to stay in the lane and then suddenly it veers out of the lane because you're driving too fast. So up to 130, it works very well, but not after that. I also tested the lane departure correction by letting myself drift off the road accidentally a few times. And it worked very reliably, but the car was always about half a meter over the lane line. So if there were traffic on the left and I drifted into the left lane, it could lead to an accident. There are cars that correct you back more quickly, so earlier. And not only after your tire is already completely over the line. Otherwise, I have to say it worked very reliably. And the cabin monitoring, we have this sensor here on the left that always keeps an eye on you. It's a bit too strict for my taste, I have to point that out. So you constantly get messages like concentrate on the traffic, you are tired and things like that. You can turn it off, but you have to turn it off again every time you start the car. To be honest, I find it rather annoying in every car and don't really use these cabin monitoring systems, but in the BYD specifically, I turn it off again immediately. The speed limit warning for when you're driving too fast is also always activated, but you can deactivate it with a swipe down, which I showed in the settings video, just completely with a shortcut key right away at every start. Then you won't be warned if you're speeding. But that warning, I don't find it that bad because it does have its purpose and justification, I'd say, so you don't get a speeding ticket, so you don't drive too fast and so on. By the way, I also really like the steering wheel because it just feels very good in your hands. It's very well made. You have a lot in your hands, but not too much. so it has a good thickness, I think. It also has aluminum accents, or at least an aluminum look, even though it's actually plastic. And the buttons are actually physical. You can press them all the way. They have a good pressure point. Your fingers rest nicely on these buttons, and you can really control everything wonderfully, from the steering wheel, from the assistance systems to the displays and the music and so on. Definitely a thumbs up for that. And the steering is also very, very good and precise. Surprisingly good for a small vehicle. In sport mode, it's a bit sharper and a bit stiffer, and otherwise it's very comfortable, but it's really top notch. I like it a lot. It's really fun to drive this car. And speaking of steering, let's also talk about the turning circle. BYD specifies 9.9 meters. That's very, very good, but of course the car has a short wheelbase, so you can definitely make a U-turn on a relatively narrow street in one go. I like that a lot, and that's definitely how it should be for a city car. Then, of course, there's the important topic of charging performance. It's not quite as crucial for a small car, but it's still not unimportant. What's very good is that we can charge with 11 kilowatts AC. With 11 kilowatts at a home wall box, for example, or at the urban slow charging stations, the car can be charged from 0 to 100 in just under 4 hours with the large battery, and in about 3 hours with the small one. And for DC charging, the Comfort model has a maximum of 85 kilowatts, while the less expensive trim lines have 65 kilowatts. And I was able to test the Comfort model here, and we charged from 15 to 80% in just under 32 minutes. The manufacturer states 10 to 80% in 30 minutes. We were, so to speak, if you do a rough calculation, maybe 3 minutes slower, so 10% slower than what BYD stated, but that could also be due to the day, the charging station, whatever. All in all, the charging test was okay and roughly in line with what the manufacturer announced. It's definitely a charging speed that, well, it can't keep up with the 800 volt systems that, for example, XPeng is already releasing, or the VW group on the new PPE platform. But with half an hour, you're simply within the standard that is currently more or less the rule for most electric cars, give or take 5 minutes, and with that you can definitely go on a long distance trip. If you can drive almost 250 kilometers on the highway, let's say you have a little bit 10% left in the battery, then you drive 220 kilometers, charge for half an hour, and then you can drive another 200 kilometers or so. And that's actually quite okay, I have to say. And what BYD always offers is vehicle to load, which I think is great, even 3.3 kilowatts. We can basically draw power from the car with the corresponding vehicle to load adapter, and then operate electrical devices with it. That's really cool for camping and so on. You probably wouldn't necessarily take this car on a big camping trip because you don't have a lot of space to transport many things. But if you're out and about somewhere and want to run a coffee machine or something else, or you want to charge another electric car to give it a bit of a jump start, perhaps, all of that is possible with the vehicle to load adapter, which you can also get from BYD, and then you can draw power from the car. Unfortunately, German manufacturers and others can't really do that yet, or very few of them offer it so far. Oh, and one more thing. When you drive to a fast charging station, the battery has to be at the right temperature. And here's a point of criticism which I've had with 1 or 2 other BYDs as well. You can't preheat the battery. BYD says that if you set a charging station as a destination in the navigation system, the battery will automatically preheat to the appropriate temperature. I did that too, which is why I think we reached the 85 kilowatts immediately. But I don't see anywhere whether the battery is being preheated and when it has reached its temperature. It would be nice if that came in an update at some point, so you can see right here whether I already have the fast charging power, the fast charging capability. I find it particularly good with vehicles from the VW group, for example, where you can even start the battery heating at the push of a button and see how many kilowatts are already technically possible in terms of maximum charging power. That would be really cool. But that's completely missing here, and the option to set the state of charge is also completely missing. So I can't say that I only want to charge the car to 60 or 80%. Instead, when I plug it in, it always charges fully to 100%. That's not such a big deal because the LFP battery, the Blade battery in here, is allowed to be charged to 100% and should even be regularly charged to 100%, so that's okay. But there might still be different scenarios where you don't want to fully charge the battery. Maybe simply because you say on a certain day when electricity at home is very expensive, I just want to top it up a little. I can't set that beforehand, but I could, for example, end the charging process from home via the smartphone app or something like that. So I think by and large I've summarized everything that I've noticed about the vehicle so far. I'm sure much more would come to mind if I talked about it longer, but that should cover the most important points. I hope you found it helpful. Feel free to check out the playlist if you want to see the detailed tests where I went into all of this again in the individual tests. And I would especially appreciate it if you could give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. It doesn't cost you anything and you'll always be notified when there are more videos on the channel. I test various electric cars on the channel and also solar systems and balcony power stations. So if you're interested, feel free to stick around. And also be sure to check the video description where I have various online shop discount coupons and so on for you, for example, for fans BYD. You can buy accessories for the car there at a discount with my code, and also the Linky Fun AI box, which allows you to, for example, watch videos or play games in almost any vehicle with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. That's also possible with it. And feel free to tune in again if you like. And thanks for watching. Take care. See you next time and bye-bye. This video is brought to you by Fans BYD. At Fans BYD, you can get all kinds of accessories for all common BYD vehicles. Just select your desired vehicle and browse. And with the discount code in the video description, you'll also receive an additional discount. You can simply enter this code in the shopping cart. And now have fun shopping.